Hello there, welcome back to Rough Cut Woodworking. In our ongoing series of cabinetry, we're going to spend a little bit of time making a simple drawer front. Now today we're making one drawer front, but I'm going to install it in a 4-drawer cabinet, so you also get to see how that's done. We're making our drawer fronts today as a slab drawer front. In other words, one chunk of wood, and that's it. Nothing, no detail in the middle, nothing like that. So it's simplistic, but it can apply to all the others. And we're using wormy maple, so as you can see, it's got a lot of form to it and figure to it, and we'll have to putty a few holes as well. I've already taken it to the upcut saw and cut it to rough length, which means it's 1 inch too long right now. Now we're going to move on and square the board, and then we'll go from there.
As you're cutting on the joiner, don't be afraid to take 2 cuts if the edge doesn't look good. Next, go to the table saw, set the correct width of your board, send it through. After that, don't miss the step of trimming off one end. We need to square it up so that you can flip it around. Now set exact length and cut the other end. Next step is to go to the planer. Your first run will be at 14/16. Run it through, turn the handle 1 full turn to 13/16, and then run through your second. Now you should be ready for the wide belt sander. This one I sped up a bit because I wanted you to be able to mentally count how many times I'm having to send the board through the sander to get it smooth. Once the rough sanding's done, pull out the belt, swap it to the finer grit, and then start sanding again. There's not an exact number I'm looking for you to sand to. It has to be thicker than 0.75, that's 3/4 of an inch. But as long as it's over that, that's okay. You may have noticed that I put pencil lines on the board. That'll ensure that it is being sanded. As soon as those pencil lines are gone, you're good. Next, head to the edge sander. Sand the ends of the boards while it's tight against that stop on the left side. You notice that I'm feeling it with my finger. That's definitely going to be what you want to check. Turn it 90 degrees and also sand the edges. And I do it this way because I want to use more of the belt to keep it from wearing in one spot. Get both edges so you can't feel any bumps and you can't see any.
Now that we have our drawer front that is completely cut to the right size, it's squared, it's also run through the thickness planer and sanded so everything is nice and smooth. And with that fine belt on the wide belt sander, this is now finished sanded. The only thing we have left is, number one, take off these very sharp edges. These are almost knife-like in that they will cut you. So we want to make sure to just lightly take it off. I don't want to see an incredibly rounded corner. I still want it to look square. So it's called softening the corner or breaking the edge, however you want to call it. We're going to do that with some sandpaper, and then we're going to putty the holes. All we're doing here is just a few swipes right across that sharp edge. And it changes from very sharp to nice and dull, but it still appears to be square. It doesn't take very much. Like I said, just a couple of swipes is all it takes. And that's all we need. Then we flip and do the same thing. Good. And that's it. So now it's a shaker style is what this would be called. Now we have all these little wormholes, knots, things like that. And in this case, because it's going to be white later on, it doesn't matter what color putty I use. So go ahead and grab some wood putty and just squeeze it in those holes. We want it to be a nice flat surface. So push it in and then scrape it all back off again. There's one more there. And on the other side, we have a slightly bigger knot. Just whatever it takes, just squeeze it in there so it's going to be covered. And then make sure to wait until the putty is dry before you sand it. Otherwise, you're just going to pull the putty back out and have to start over anyway. Oh, one more there. Good. Now we just let this all dry. It may take upwards of 10 minutes or so. Then I'm going to sand it off and we'll be ready to prime and finish it. Now we'll actually put the drawer fronts on the box itself. So once you have all the drawer fronts figured out, gathered together and in a stack, so you're ready to go, pull out the box they go on, and we're going to drill a 3/16 hole, 2 of them in each drawer front. And there's no real measurement for this other than one off to the right and one off to the left. For the smaller drawers, I'm gonna put it just above center. And the reason is because the bottom is about 3/4 of an inch up. So center in the open drawer box is a little up. So about here and about here. And like I said, if you're a little off, it doesn't really matter. All right, so those holes are in and ready. Clear off any sawdust. We want it to be nice and flat here. Now you got to pull out all the upper drawers. So these 3 have to come out as I do the bottom one, and I'm going to work up from the bottom. Next, you're going to need a handful of shims, and these are going to be able to space the drawers, the gaps that go between the drawers and so forth. We want to make sure to get those right. So I'm going to put a shim down on each end. The bottom drawer should be about a 1/16 of an inch or so up from the base. We don't want it to drag on the table. So we get the largest drawer front and just set it on top of there. And this is again, your best guess. Now the big thing right now is to get this one straight. Now how do you know it's straight? Look right here on the 2 edges. If it's crooked, you'll notice that your overlay, your gap is just incorrect. It's not straight with the side. So in this case, I've got to pull this one out a little so this end drops down. It could be, it just depends. But you want this overhang to match this overhang. I'm going to bring that up a touch. And that looks pretty good. Once it's in place, so it's even left and right, about the same height up off the table, just take some clamps and gently clamp it into place, making sure that it didn't move. Right there and there. Next, we take one of these screws. It has a large pan head, okay, Phillips drive. We take your Phillips driver here, and I can just bring my whole body into the cabinet and screw those in. Okay, take your clamps off, and that drawer front is on just fine. Now we put in the next drawer. And we're back to shims. Now notice that I left the bottom shims in. I don't want a gap there so things can start dipping down. The more weight I put on each front as I go up, the more they're gonna wanna dip down because of just weight, just gravity. So we put some shims in right there. And put in the next drawer front. Now, of course, make sure to look at the drawer fronts and make sure they look good. If I have a definite good side and bad side, make sure the good side's out, things like that. And then put it on there. Now, the gap between them should be about 1/8 of an inch. So it can be a hair more, hair less, but it should be pretty close. By all means, use your tape measure to make sure it's about 1/8. And then match the overhang. Again, make sure this isn't crooked. I can bring these shims in and out to get it just right. I'm going to shift that over just a hair. And it looks like I got lucky enough I don't need to shift them in or out. And that's okay, just to get it right. And then do the same process. Clamp it in and screw it in. And in this case, it's now going to be a little bit awkward for me to get in there. So by all means, these can come out for a moment, pull the drawer out, and then I can screw it in this way. Okay, but I am going to put the shims back in again, just barely, just nice so it stays where it's supposed to be. And then move up to the third one and continue the same thing. For your last drawer front, it's slightly different when you clamp it. We'll start the same, put the shims in. That side looks good. And when you're done, you should have roughly 1/4 of an inch above on the top, give or take. Like I said, a little more, a little less, but somewhere in that range, it should be pretty close. Now, obviously, I don't have anywhere to clamp this like the others, like I did before. So open your clamp a little further. We're just gonna clamp it on the back of the stretcher between the sides. So right up here. I know it's hard to see from that angle, but there's a 6-inch stretcher on the top. And we're just clamping it to that. So my spacing is right, it's good left and right. Now I'm gonna jump on the table and just dig in there and see if we can get it screwed in. Okay, all the drawer fronts are in. We just take all these shims out of there. And we check everything looks flat. And if there is any movement after you take the clamps off, that's okay. We try to use drawer glides that are adjustable. So on site, when they're installed, I can make some minor adjustments and get these perfect. But for now, the drawer fronts are on and they look good.